career outside of Canada. And it changes you. It's hard to now look at anything that's happening in the world with a single lens. So that kind of globalness, that ability to kind of put the pieces together, not just macroeconomically, but socially, geopolitically, I could have read every newspaper in Canada and had a concept of it.
Yes.
But living here and having been in the Middle East, there's a deeper understanding. And I think that I bring that to my work as well.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Reset Diaries. Today I have with me Kelly Weber, and she's originally a Canadian, but a large part of her career has been in Asia, in Dubai, and now in Singapore. So what is interesting about Kelly is that she was kind of pushed into sales career, but she took the matter in her own hands. Even after being humongously successful in sales stint, she realized there's still something missing and it is not aligned to her true calling and values. And what she did next is something she will explain herself. So I will give her the chance now to speak. Welcome, Kelly. Welcome to Reset Diaries.
Thank you so much for having me, Asta, and thank you for that lovely intro. I might argue with the humongous, but let's see.
No, I mean, you spend a large part of your career in sales. So let's begin. So Kelly, maybe you can start to share a little bit about yourself. Although I did give a brief, but if you can just say in your own words about your journey so far from Canada to Asia and in different countries.
Absolutely. So I finished my undergrad at University of Toronto in psychology. And as you know, with psychology, you can go the therapy route, research, or on to a doctorate or medical school. And those paths at the time weren't interesting to me. And I didn't feel like I had a vocation. But what I did have in mind was a location where I wanted to be. And that was overseas. I wanted to have that, kind of global experience, be pushed out of my comfort zone and see other parts of the world. And that is when I reached out to an old boss of mine from when I was working at the Toronto International Film Festival and got a role in Dubai at the Dubai International Film Festival. And that was originally a 4-month contract. Subletted my apartment, got on a plane and went to do that. And 4 months in Dubai ended up actually being 8.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was absolutely hooked when I got there. Just all the people I got to meet. As 85% of the population in Dubai is from somewhere else, and it was just such a beautiful way to get to know people from all over, as well as culture in Middle East, North Africa, travel opportunities, etc. Now, the thing is, when the global financial crisis hit, there weren't many jobs left in events. And again, events was not my calling, but it was where I was. But what there was left were sales roles. And so to stay in Dubai and continue that amazing adventure I was having, even though I didn't really know what I wanted to do in my career, I took that on. And I guess I've always been a bit of an achiever. So sales can be so addictive that way, right? You get that first bonus and then you get the bigger catch. Exactly. And then you get to work for a bigger company. Maybe then it's a regional role. So one thing kind of led to another. And it was fantastic and super exciting because I was traveling a lot, meeting people from all over. I'd never had any formal business background, so I was also learning all of that on the go, which I loved. And that was basically how I got into sales. And, I think it worked for a very long time. But I always had that little kernel of doubt, which is, what else could I do? And as you know, when you're on kind of the achievement escalator, let's say, there's always the next to go after. What else could there be? And that was when I really decided to start thinking seriously about leaving. It did take me 6 years, though, in full honesty, to make that decision.
So how did you come to that point of really discovering that you want to pivot to marketing, and within marketing also you want to specifically pivot to comms and branding? How did you discover that, that is something where you want to make your career in?
Yeah, I mean, a great question. I wish I'd had like a divine moment of inspiration, but actually when I knew I wanted to make a change originally, there's a few common denominators. So for example, I loved communicating. I loved working with people, helping others, solving problems. This was kind of like the golden thread that had always gone throughout my career. Even when I was a student working in restaurants, in retail in high school, that was kind of the golden thread. And even though the why was there, which was I want to do something that's more aligned maybe with my strengths, something that makes me hop out of bed in the morning, I didn't know what the what was. And that was when I started to kind of activate my network and reach out to people and say, look, I want to make this change, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. And they had recommended this specific career coaching company called the Happy Mondays Company. And that is who I ended up engaging to help me through this process. And what was really special about them is it's very action oriented. So yes, they want to help me kind of figure out where I need to go, but then also the steps I need to take to get there and how to, essentially tell that story and make that pivot. It's very realistic as well. It's not just in terms of, oh, what do you want to do? It's very much in terms of, what are your wants and then needs as well, not just in terms of intellectual and emotional, but also, financial responsibilities you might have, etc.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned. So basically, it was through a coaching process you discovered that how all your interests and your experiences aligning, and maybe storytelling and branding and comms would be the next best pivot for you.
Yeah, it was kind of like we came up with a mosaic of ideas. Maybe I would want to go back to events. Was that something? Because there's a few common threads in terms of organizing, storytelling, but then
Right.
I also enjoy strategy.
Hmm.
And through the process, it's quite interesting. Their format, there's a whole vetting section where if you've kind of alighted on a few things you might be interested in, they send you out to those people doing those roles connected via their network to help you figure out what actually is the day to day of that role like. Because the
Right.
grass is always greener, right? We always think what
Yeah.
someone else is doing is funner, more exciting.
Yeah.
So you go out to meet. So I got to go out to meet people that were kind of in all the disciplines I was considering. And for a while as well, I was even considering, maybe I need to be doing business development, or there was some sales facets I was exploring as well that I hadn't done before. And that was hugely helpful to hear from people that had done it every day to figure out, I like that, or, oh, I could do that, or, maybe not. And so that entire process was hugely helpful as well.
So, what were some of the first steps you took when you were clear that, okay, now I want to transition and I want to start a new career trajectory?
Yeah. So a huge part of the process that I'd gone through career coaching, sorry, as well was to align those transferable skills.
Hmm.
So, in sales and in communications, knowing your audience is absolutely essential. It's foundational.
Hmm.
So, kind of identifying those transferable skills. Secondly, although transferable skills are hugely valuable, there were some capability gaps I had. So I took some courses to kind of
Okay.
upskill in those areas. And moreover, it was kind of to give me that confidence that I knew what I was doing and that I had the terms, the tools,
Speak
everything
the language.
exactly in
Yeah.
my toolkit.
Hmm.
And then the third piece was to volunteer in my chosen domain. So skills based volunteering with some organizations I really care about here in Singapore. One of them is Keynote Women Speakers Directory. Their mission is to advance diversity on speaking stages globally, and I supported them on some content marketing there as well. And then, of course, the job application started. That was a whole other process. We can
Right.
we can go into that later.
So, to summarize, to pivot, you tapped onto your network to know more. You upskill yourself by doing some more courses and understand the language, the ecosystem. And a third thing that you mentioned was to do some pro bono work to kind of gain really hands on experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
brilliant. So now I want to understand about the job application process. You at one point you started your own firm. So I want to understand that piece of your journey because that was something which really, surprised me that how you took matter in your own hands and didn't wait for someone to employ you, but you just started your own thing. So I want to understand that journey of yours.
Thanks. Yeah. So I really wanted to work in corporate or in a business or for an organization that I really believed in. Because part of the career kind of coaching process to really figure out, okay, for this next chapter in my career, what do I want to do? And it was very important for me that it was a purpose driven business and that there was a values alignment. And I love working with other people and I love going deep into a topic. So I really wanted to be in house. Problem is the caliber of talent you have in Singapore is very high. And so the
Hmm.
requirements for roles are quite stringent. And
Hmm.
fairly so. So that meant that originally I was applying for quite junior roles, thinking, okay, I just need a foot in the door. That's
Yeah.
fine. Would be happy to be with any team, doing something I love. But I was told I was too senior. And
Hmm.
when I started applying for more senior roles, I wasn't even getting a call back.
Because you
So
don't have relevant experience in that
exactly,
specific stream.
exactly. And after a few interviews kind of going nowhere, I was so desperate. I actually took a sales job, and this was a blessing. The offer was revoked at the 11th hour because of COVID,
Wow.
and yeah, I couldn't start, but it was a blessing in disguise. Obviously, after the frustration had dissipated and I'd gone for a good run, I came back and I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I'm gonna open my own business. And the thought process there was I have services to offer,
Hmm.
and thankfully I can sell them. And I will use this as a means to build my portfolio in this space, establish myself as an experienced
Hmm.
person, and try to make the move from there. And that's when I started my company, Refine.
Because you learned something and you knew you can offer some services and you already have selling skills, so you thought that you might as well build credibility in this subject by starting your own firm. So how was it? Did you get clients easily, or how was that
Yeah, it was quite interesting. So initially, because I was focusing predominantly on branding
experience?
and communications, the sweet spot was kind of a business that had been around for 5 to 10 years. They had a brand, but maybe didn't know exactly how they wanted to speak about it or to put some formality around that branding. And then all of the traditional comms work as well, whether it's a press release or a comms strategy. And what I wanted to do was to kind of have an approach to how I solve some of these problems and kind of a template for the types of engagements I could offer. And so I did pro bono work again, this time for friends and friends of friends. Be like,
Okay.
this is what I want to offer. This is
So
how
is it
much.
like startups, like startup?
Sometimes it was startups, sometimes it was solopreneurs,
Okay.
sometimes it was I also did some personal branding for people that just wanted to revamp or refine that. And so I did a few jobs for free just to see, okay, this is how I do it, this is my thinking, this is my
Hmm.
thought process, this is how I solve these problems, and this would be the outcome.
Hmm.
Is it of this value? And then people would say yes, no. And in turn, from those people that I had helped for free, I got recommendations and word of mouth referrals, which were hugely helpful.
So
Yeah,
you were kind of validating your learnings and validating your frameworks with the people by doing.
absolutely. Yeah, like a
Right,
product market fit. I was trying to
right,
figure out
right.
this is what I have to offer, this is how I think of it. Because I don't view communication and branding challenges from a strict communication and branding lens. I
Hmm.
also look at it from a commercial perspective. So I wanted to see, will this work? Is there appetite for this? And then of course all of the other things that I had to do, right? I had to be on social media. So provide valuable content to my prospective audience via Instagram, via LinkedIn. Obviously, networking was hugely important, and I don't mean asking people for favors, although that is also required sometimes, but going out, connecting with people, understanding the challenges they're having in branding and communications, and seeing if there is some way I could help.
So what was the most difficult part to pivot from sales?
So, as I shared earlier, I really wanted to be working for a company with colleagues on a shared common goal. So I think the hardest part for this pivot, because for me, the pivot was going to be complete when I was in a company again, not running my own business. And I know that other people may say otherwise, but that was the goal for me. And the
Okay.
hardest part was convincing someone to hire me. And what I say to anyone else that's looking at a pivot now, it only takes one. It takes one employer that believes that whatever you've done thus far in your chosen domain, as well as the background you have and those transferable skills you're bringing, that they're useful. Maybe there's a bit of confirmation bias here, but I felt that I would be hired by someone who appreciated having my commercial background combined with my communications experience.
Hmm.
And again, not everyone wants that. Not
Yeah.
everybody sees value in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the hardest, absolutely the hardest part.
Yeah, I completely get it. So you don't have to chase 100 yeses. But we just need that one person to take a bet that, okay, as you said, that, you will be the right fit based on your experience and your eagerness to learn and contribute. So then when you started your firm and you started getting recommendations, and now you're employed with Aquila Clean Energy. So, how did that transition go? And how long did it take you to wrap up your business and go full time?
Yeah, well, it's worth saying I have been so lucky, and so many people have helped me along the way. I think that's a huge piece as well, right? Sometimes you get the luck,
Yeah.
and I was super fortunate to be
But luck
introduced.
meets the preparation at some point, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
believe that. Yeah.
true, but I had so many people that helped me along the way. And I was fortunately introduced to Aquila Clean Energy through a dear friend of mine.
Hmm.
And that's how I came to know them and started doing contract work for them
Okay.
via my business.
Oh,
And yeah, yeah. And it was a fantastic way, I guess, for them to see how I work, for me to see how they work. And when a full-time role came up internally, I applied for it. And man, I was so ecstatic to get it because everything kind of lined up with Aquila. I really wanted to be in a purpose-driven business. Aquila is at the forefront of the energy transition, investing in, developing, building, and operating clean energy assets, which is hugely exciting. And the values of the company really align with my own as well. So yeah, it was such a fantastic way to kind of close that, not close the pivot. What you might even say, well, I'm still learning every day, right? But yeah, in terms of timelines, I said it would be 3 years.
to
So
really make that pivot from sales to
yeah,
your marketing gig. All right.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you hung on to your patience, to your perseverance in these 3 years. Like you were so committed, because otherwise, I think after some point, you're also like, okay, this is not happening. Why not lean back on your strengths and experience? So I'm really proud of the fact that you stuck to your goals and your commitment, that you had to make this pivot. Now, looking back, what sales skills you think are helping you now in executing your job perfectly?
Yeah, so sales people at all levels are communicating every day. They're telling the story of their company, they're communicating to connect with people, to build relationships, to identify and qualify what's the opportunity, to provide solutions. So I think salespeople, when it's done well, are fantastic communicators and storytellers. So that piece definitely runs through. A huge skill that salespeople have to hone as well is influencing others. And I think in
Mm,
any business, in any role or function, we have to influence people around our ideas, around things that we want to galvanize people around. So that's also used. Coincidentally, I also actually leverage my commercial skills. And the key piece there is that from having worked in sales, I understand how business works. I understand how you make money, what's important, the levers you have there. And that has helped me significantly add value as a communicator because, my boss can throw something commercial to me over the fence and I can grab it and run with it.
mm,
I'm not afraid of numbers, love numbers, things like that. So while I'm not saying comms people don't have that commercial acumen, I'm simply saying that the level that I bring to the business has been beneficial for me.
right, right. You're right. I mean, storytelling is one of the things that helped you, and that is something salespeople are always doing, speaking to the pain points of the customer. And the second thing that you mentioned was understanding the rhythm and the rigor of the business, because you come from sales, that comes naturally to you. And the third thing that you mentioned was influencing others, which rightfully so is like essential for everyone. But Kelly, I will shift gears a little bit now, looking back and reflecting back at your own journey. If you were to advise someone who is kind of excelling in their job but still feeling unfulfilled, what three actions or three micro actions they can start taking to make that shift in the direction in which they want?
Great question. And I think this will vary significantly. First, I think it's really good to understand why you feel the current role is unfulfilling. Because sometimes with a few tweaks, that same role or company could become something really exciting for you.
Hmm.
So why are you making this change? And then also to understand the what. Okay, I want to make a change, but what next?
Yeah, I think that's a tough part.
And if that's something that you can't come up with yourself through reflecting or through talking to your trusted board of advisors, then I would recommend engaging a career coach. Secondly, I think you mentally need to be prepared to start at the bottom. And this has two knock-on effects, right? So you need to be ready to be full learner mode, curious all the time anyway, but extra curious and open. And I think there's a vulnerability to that, to being willing to be willing to accept that I'm not going to know what's going on. The second part of that is the financial piece. So you have to be prepared to take a cut in salary, potentially, maybe not, and also to have a bit of a buffer in your rainy day fund or whatever you might have in terms of savings to bridge that gap until you're making the salary that you had previously, and to make sure that it works for you and your family situation. And third, I'd say networking is absolutely essential. My career pivot was an extremely iterative process, and I got so many ideas and so many interesting lenses to look through because of the conversations I was having with a variety of people across industries, across sectors. And those connections have been invaluable. And when I say connections have been invaluable, I met through this process some of my closest friends today.
Wow.
So I think that the networking piece is absolutely essential.
Love it. I love it. And I believe, what's your advice on networking piece? Is it something you should do only when you are pivoting, or that's something you should always do? Because I love that you said it's a very iterative process for you, and every conversation kind of shaped your idea of what's next, what else, what more I can do.
So I'm an extrovert. So I love meeting people anyway.
Yeah.
And I always, if anybody's asking me any recommendations about networking, I say, do it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's about meeting people. It's about finding what you connect on. I do obviously network, within the comm space and within the industry and things like that. But I just love meeting people just to hear what they're up to and what's going on, and understand a little bit more about their sector. A very easy way to do that is to kind of try to be out meeting someone new or connecting with someone in your network again that maybe you haven't spoken to in a while, but you've been thinking of at least once a month. And then it's just part of the routine, right?
Right.
And I always love to help others if I can when I network. And I think when you give as well via networking, it feels better.
Right. Yeah, love it. I love it. And since you also spoke about the financial piece and keeping the buffers aside, I mean, some people have that flexibility, some don't. Is there any specific strategy you would advise to kind of de-risk your transition?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, the financial piece is real, right?
Yes.
So I think if it's something that you want to do, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but to set aside some money and things, maybe in 18 months, 2 years, that you will have that kind of 1 year buffer to play around with. And I think also to kind of know your endpoint, at which point you then say, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe I have to go back to my prior field. And
Yeah.
then what you pursue is you pursue that pivot in your free time, you pursue that pivot kind of on your weekends, and it has to be done in parallel. So it
Mm-hmm.
really kind of depends on your financial situation. I was super fortunate that my partner is very supportive, and he really wanted me to find something that would light me up and keep me
Yeah.
excited. So it was really fantastic both to have his obviously financial support, but moreover his emotional support, and to never have that question, why are you doing this? So I'd say, choosing your partner carefully is also very important for your success.
It may sound far fetched, but yeah, in large scheme of things, if you think, they say this is one of the most important decisions you make in your life, your partner, because they have to play a role in every single step. So yeah, love it. Love it. So,
Yeah.
Kelly, now I'll talk a little bit about your experience of West and East. You are from Canada and you've lived in Asia. It's a little bit of fun question. So, if you can tell me about your experience of being in Asia or your general perspective about life, has it shaped in any way? Some two, three things if that comes on top of your
Absolutely.
mind.
Yeah, I spent the majority of my career outside of Canada, and it changes you. It's hard to now look at anything that's happening in the world with a single lens.
Mm.
So that kind of globalness, that ability to kind of put the pieces together, not just macroeconomically, but socially, geopolitically,
Mm.
I I could have read every newspaper in Canada and had a concept of it,
Yes.
but living here and having been in the Middle East, there's a deeper understanding. And I think that I bring that to my work as well.
So, have you picked up any interesting habit by living
Well,
Asians?
I'm a huge foodie. I like to say I'm a good eater. I love eating. So obviously, all the cuisines are just super exciting. And then, of course, in Singapore, you get to celebrate all the festivals as well. And our friends have been really generous taking us under the wing. So, we were with some friends for
Yeah.
Lunar New Year, with other friends last year over Diwali, and celebrating those festivals is just beautiful and
Yeah.
such a lovely way to experience the region and share people's cultures with them.
Absolutely. Well, we are almost towards the end, Kelly. So I want to ask you what's next for you. I know you're happily working with Akila networking and doing all sorts of things, but is there any professional or personal goal you would like to share with us that you're chasing right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going for my strategic communications management professional certification. And that is through the International Association of Business Communicators. And I just want that feather in my cap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we wish you luck for that.
Thank
Before we end, Kelly, I want to ask you if anybody listening to your story, if there's one piece of advice you can give them, what would that be?
There's
Hmm.
going to be a lot of naysayers along the way. I even had an HR executive tell me, you should
Mm.
just stick to sales. You'll get a better job. And, they meant well. And I think you have to hone in on who really is kind of your trusted group of advisors that have your best interests at heart and kind of block out the rest because it's going to take a lot of grit and determination and patience. And it's going to be important to, you know, celebrate those small wins along the way, the steps that you need to take that are going to get you where you need to be and not be distracted when people tell you it's not possible.
Love it. Yeah, you're right. There's going to be a lot of naysayers, but like stick to your guns. I love it. And you did that. And I'm happy for the transformation and the pivot that you made. And now you're going for certification. So we wish you all the luck. And thank you very much, Kelly. And I hope it's as interesting for my listeners as it was for me listening to your story and how you made this pivot. Because living in Asia for 10 years, I can definitely say it's not an easy feat because you're really typecasted in certain roles. So, yeah, amazing. Thank you very much, Kelly. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Asta.